Imagine watching a typical backstage recording. Nothing special, just the movement of crew members, faint sounds, and dim, flickering lights. Then, in a split second, something changes. An unexpected figure appears in the background, barely visible, but enough to make millions of eyes widen. And from that moment on, the internet has never truly calmed down. That's exactly what happened backstage at the 2026 Greater Bay Area Film Concert. Initially, all attention was focused on Wang Yibo. He walked casually, looking focused as usual. His charisma was still strong even in the briefest glimpse. Fans immediately recognized his silhouette, his gait, and his signature gestures, which are hard to replicate. But that wasn't what made the video explode. Behind him, for just a split second, another figure appeared. Indistinct, not fully visible, but familiar enough to spark one big question. Was it Xiao Zhan? The footage went viral. Within hours, multiple versions of the video clip emerged, each trying to explain the same thing. Some slowed it down, some zoomed in, and some even added high-contrast filters to capture the tiniest details. And that's where things got even more interesting. At first glance, the figure behind Wang Yibo appeared to be a man with a tall build and body proportions remarkably similar to Xiao Zhan. His shoulders were square, his steps were light, and his movements seemed to follow the same path. However, the lighting in the area was very low, creating shadows that could easily deceive the eye. Fans began comparing frame by frame. In one cut, a shadowy face could be seen that briefly resembled Xiao Zhan's jawline. In another, the silhouette of his hair appeared identical to the style he had sported in his last few public appearances. But still, none of that was enough to confirm anything. Speculation began to grow. Some believed it was actually Xiao Zhan, appearing discreetly backstage at the big event. They argued that his presence might have been deliberately kept secret, and the brief appearance was simply a coincidence caught on camera. However, there were also many skeptics. They believed it was simply a visual illusion, the result of an unfavorable camera angle, combined with lighting that created ambiguous shapes. In the world of video footage, especially in dynamic backstage environments, something like this isn't impossible. However, there's a small detail that makes this theory hard to dismiss. In one of the most discussed frames, the figure appears to turn slightly toward the camera. The movement is so fast, it's almost imperceptible if not slowed down. But that's precisely where fans feel there's something too real to be a coincidence. Is that a facial expression? Or just a play of light? The discussion escalated when some fans tried to match the figure's clothing to outfits Xiao Zhan has worn on other occasions. Dark colors, simple cuts, and a familiar silhouette. It all seemed to go hand in hand. But once again, there's no solid evidence. Complicating the situation further is the lack of official clarification from any party. No confirmation, no denial, just silence. And in the world of fandom, silence often only adds to the mystery. The video has now been analyzed from various angles. Some are using resolution-enhancing technology, others are trying to reconstruct the lighting, and others are even comparing it to other footage from the same location. But the results remain divided. Some are convinced, some are doubtful. On the other hand, this phenomenon points to something bigger. How powerful the allure of these two names is. Even a faint image can spark a wave of global discussion. It's proof that their presence, real or not, always has a tremendous impact. And perhaps that's where the real appeal lies. It's not just about whether the figure is really Xiao Zhan, but about how one brief moment can reignite curiosity, hope, and even nostalgia among fans. Because sometimes, unanswered mysteries are more powerful than the answers themselves. The footage still exists. It's still being played, analyzed, and debated to this day. Everyone sees something different, and perhaps that's what makes it so captivating. So, is it really Xiao Zhan? Or is it just an illusion created by lighting, camera angles, and fans' expectations? The answer may never be completely certain. However, it's precisely that uncertainty that keeps this moment alive. Every time the video is replayed, there's always a new detail that feels visible that was previously overlooked. It's as if the footage holds layers of detail that only a truly discerning eye can uncover. Some fans even claim to have begun recalling old interactions, public moments, and even the pattern of the two's appearances at various events. They try to connect dots that may never have been meant to connect, but feel too coincidental to simply ignore. In discussion forums, theories grow increasingly complex. Some believe that if it's really Xiao Zhan, then his appearance isn't mere coincidence, but part of something larger, whether a project, a meeting, or even just a silent presence that doesn't want to be highlighted. However, others are beginning to see this phenomenon from a different perspective. They believe that this massive reaction isn't just about who's in the video, but about how fans project their expectations onto something that isn't necessarily real. And that's where the line between fact and perception begins to blur. What started out as a simple recording has now transformed into a visual puzzle. Every shadow becomes a clue, every tiny movement becomes material for analysis, and every frame becomes evidence that can be interpreted in various ways. Interestingly, even those who initially didn't believe it began to doubt their own beliefs after viewing the analysis over and over again. There was something about the video that was difficult to fully explain, a feeling that felt familiar yet undeniable. Over time, the video was no longer just about a single backstage moment. It became a phenomenon, a collective story built from thousands of interpretations, speculations, and clashing emotions. And perhaps, ultimately, that's what makes it so valuable. Not because it provides answers, but because it invites everyone to keep asking questions. As time passed, the intensity of the discussion began to subside, but the mystery never truly disappeared. The video continued to circulate, constantly reappearing on timelines, as if refusing to be forgotten. Each time it resurfaced, a new wave of discussion was sparked, bringing fresh perspectives. Others began to try to view it more rationally. They slowed down their expectations, trying to separate what was truly seen from what was merely perceived. In a calmer analysis, some concluded that the human brain tends to recognize familiar patterns, even when the visual information is incomplete. However, this is precisely why the debate has become so compelling. On the one hand, there's logic that tries to ground everything, explaining it all with camera angles, lighting, and coincidence. On the other, there's intuition that insists there's something unusual about the footage, something that feels too specific to be an illusion. Some fans have even begun comparing the mysterious figure's micro-expressions and body language to old footage of Xiao Zhan. They look for similarities in the way he stands, the direction of his head, even the rhythm of his steps, which are only visible for a split second. Is that an exaggeration? Perhaps. But to them, every little detail holds meaning. What's even more interesting is that this phenomenon also demonstrates how a single, brief moment can evolve into a much larger narrative. A mere few seconds of footage now has a life of its own, evolving over time and interpretation. And in the process, the line between reality and story becomes increasingly thin. For some, this is simply entertainment, a lighthearted mystery that's fun to discuss. But for others, it's something more personal, involving a figure who holds a special place in their journey as fans. Ultimately, perhaps we don't really need definitive answers, because it's precisely in that uncertainty that curiosity lives on. The discussion continues, and that small moment transforms into something much bigger than just backstage footage.